Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. Recruiting is a battlefield where the rules keep changing and the chaos never stops. As the world shifted to remote work, real connection and unfiltered learning have never been more urgent. This isn't just a podcast, it's your survival guide. Welcome to the revolution, Your Digital Bullpen.
Hi guys.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Welcome to
so
the Digital
good.
Bullpen. Yeah.
Yes, officially, we've got our amazing guests. Before we get started, though, I just want to make sure to remind everyone to like us, comment, share. All of this gets out to our community, and our community is to help others really dive into some of the challenges that are happening in staffing. So I'm very excited to bring and invite our guest, Brian Hunt. He has over 12 years of executive leadership in talent acquisition. Brian Hunt, the outsourcing guy.
Outsourcing guy, marketing did that one up for you.
Yeah, they did. It stuck.
He founded Core RPO with a clear mission to combine his expertise in recruiting with his deep operational knowledge of global outsourcing. During his time as a talent acquisition leader, Brian played a pivotal role in scaling a global sourcing function, including building and managing a high-performing talent sourcing team in India. His success in this area was driven by hands-on understanding of both strategic hiring and international team management. Before transitioning into recruitment, Brian led software development teams across India, Venezuela, the Philippines, and Costa Rica. Again, that's why they call him the outsourcing guy.
Yeah, it is what it is.
And honestly, these experiences have shaped his vision for more efficient, scalable approach to outsourcing, not only in technology, but across all key business factors. So want to introduce Brian to Your Digital Bullpen. You're officially part of the community, and we hope that this is not the last time that you'll join us.
No, this is exciting. We've never had somebody with your type of background. We always have folks that are either in the trenches leading teams, and you're like, yeah, but I can help maximize teams. It's just super excited about that.
Yeah, I love your guys' podcast. I love your guys' energy. It's been fun talking to you leading up to this. So yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, we want to dive in because I know I learned a lot when we were prepping for this podcast, specifically with Brian. And so I want you to kind of share your journey, because I think it's very unique in comparison to how people traditionally fall into staffing, though he still fell into staffing like most of us.
We all do.
Tell us tell us the story. What got you thinking about RPO? Kind of, how did you get into staffing?
Who tricked you? Who tricked you?
Yeah, who tricked you? Who lied? All of the above.
Yeah, no, that's great. And thank you for that introduction. Like I said, I love your guys' energy. And it's funny, you touched on some of the things in the introduction that kind of led me down this path. But I really started my career at Deloitte and Accenture, and I was doing kind of big technology projects. So young kid out of school, thrown into a bunch of different projects that I didn't know anything about, which is kind of the those big consulting companies' way of doing things. So and I worked with a ton of different teams all over the world, multiple teams in India, South America, Central America, Philippines. And so there was just always some kind of a big outsourcing component, whether it be the ongoing management of the systems. But outsourcing was big. It's been big for a while. It was a very, very big in technology during my early years, which was, in the, early 2000s and 2010. So it was not new to me. In fact, the one thing that was new to me was staffing and recruiting. And so, having a background in technology, moving into IT staffing, it's not that hard, right? In some ways,
sure.
You know exactly what the hiring manager is looking for, because these are the same people that you've been looking for during your career to, various very specialized, niche skills and contractors and, and the key people to bring on to your implementation or your technology teams, project managers, business analysts, the whole nine yards. So, but then I ended up basically acquiring an IT staffing company in 2009, which was a really challenging time to do it. And it was an interesting time
Wow.
because
Yeah. You got into staffing when we all wanted out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
It's funny.
probably a good time, right?
Yeah.
There was that kind of like transition wave.
Yeah.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was, yeah. It was a good time. It was actually a really good time to be changing industries because
Okay.
for a while there, our business, or my core business, which is a digital agency, we were doing well, but it was also massive projects. And the one thing about massive projects is they're easy to shut down when times are tough. And so my business went from about 25 million in revenue to about 10 million in revenue in a very short period of time, just because when you're doing big programs for Allstate Insurance and they're reinvent the wheel kind of like big massive online projects, they shut them down. And eventually Allstate just decides, well, rather than building this, why don't we just buy Esurance? And I'm like, yeah, you could do that too. So that was the so I was like, okay, well, that's going to destroy my business though. And
You're like, you sure you want to?
You're like, that's a great idea, but terrible for me.
yeah, like I said, best of times, worst of times. So anyway, then I got into staffing, and I in my very kind of consultative way was learning as I was going and faking it till I make it, and hiring talented recruiters who have been doing this for years, and them kind of getting a kick out of this guy who didn't know anything about what they were doing, but yet was somehow running the business and kind of helping them understand technology and things they didn't know. I could help them kind of fill their blind spots. And so in the early days, it was kind of fun, right? I was learning about recruiting, and my staff was learning about technology. And so and we were having good relationships and good conversations with our IT partners. But then as I started to kind of grow and scale the business, we got up to about probably $7-8 million in IT staffing business, and we were trying to find more and more recruiters. And as amazing as you guys are, and you think everybody just falls into IT staffing and recruiting, it's not that easy. And especially if you've never trained or developed staff in the past, and so you're working with your own staff. And so having had a background with outsourcing and building teams offshore, I was like, what if I took some of our best recruiters and said, how about I provide you with more support, right? And that's become the kind of the theme. It's funny because in the beginning there were two people in our company that were like the best recruiters. One of them was that diehard, inquisitive, caring person who was just loved everything about recruiting, just loved her work, loved the work that she did. And then you had another guy who was super friendly, super social, loved meeting people, that other kind of side of recruiting, which is just the likable person, likable person. And so I went to my top female recruiter, and I said, I'd love to give you a team of 3 or 4 people in India to help you and to just do more of what you do. And I said, because recruiting is about 70. I was a business kind of analysis person, so I was over analyzing and hyper analyzing. I'm like, it's still, no matter way you spin it, you spend 70% of your time reaching out to candidates, right? So outbound emails, messages, phone messages, text messages, voicemails. So there's just always going to be that. And so I said, well, what if I were to give you a team to do all of that for you, instead of talking to, instead of talking to 5 to 10 candidates that you're going to put in front of your clients a week, what if you were to get 20, 40 candidates to talk to?
Yeah.
And I said, how would you like that? And it's funny. It's funny because my female recruiter, she's like, absolutely not. And I'm like,
I love this story, by the way.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. She's like, I do not know how that I could break up what I do without having the first real interaction with my candidate and really kind of work with them all the way through the process.
Cradle to grave. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. So I was like, okay, all right. That is what it is. I appreciate And so I said, I went to this second best recruiter, right? And I said, hey, Brent, you wanna take a crack at this? And he's like, yeah, sure, of course. He's loved it. So, he's a typical California guy, surfer, just really, really chill, laid back.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, his business as the second top producer went from
Mm,
like $500,000 in GP up to over like 1,500,000.
wow.
And
Nice.
and so then she was
Yeah.
not happy. She was not
She's
happy.
like,
She was
wait a
like,
minute.
She's like, why didn't you ask me?
why
Right.
didn't you ask me?
But you
Yeah.
didn't tell me I was going to grow that much.
Yes.
Yes, that's how it
Right.
is.
You
Yeah.
are giving him an unfair advantage, and I do not appreciate that. And so sure enough, we hired her for folks in India who she trained to be some of the best recruiters that
Wow.
that I know to this day. And she took her business from like $600,000 in GP all the way up to
That's
$2.2 million
Yeah.
in fees and contract fees and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
but anyway,
That's
that's how it
amazing.
started. And that's how we scaled our business. And at our height, we had like 70 people offshore and
Mm,
25 people onshore. And we were sending out thousands of candidates a month. And so
Yeah.
yeah, so now I left that business and I have my RPO business is my sole focus. And
yeah.
so yeah, helping staffing and recruiting company owners really help their best people. That's kind of
Yeah.
that's how I position it.
Yeah.
You're not outsourcing anything. You're
Yeah.
providing
Yeah.
support to your best people.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think we're going to jump into this too in a couple of questions here. But um, what I love about this is like you could really be like a smaller staffing firm kind of building this out, right? I know we're going to have a lot of people
Hmm.
excited to learn more about exactly what, the fine tuning that you've done and all of
Hmm.
that. But no, this is great because when you're small,
Yes.
you almost have to work as like triple as hard as like a big
Yeah.
firm that has like a strong database that has a built-in
100%.
brand and
Technology.
all of
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
They have the brand. And I do agree with you. And I think that it's interesting as we dive into this, like I've seen that, there's a lot of companies that it's interesting because a lot of companies are like, oh, I'm going to go to outsource, right? And they'll bring
Mm-hmm.
in a company that's in India. They probably got an email on LinkedIn. Do you need outsourcing? I mean, I got probably two already today, right?
Sure you did.
And yeah, I did. And it's like, I'm good right now. I don't need you. But it's, some people dive in and it's interesting that you pivoted and it's like, yes, you could do that. But there's kind of a secret sauce to really getting into this. Cause a client I worked with recently, I just saw the breakdown in
Mm.
the basically the standard operating procedure and who's responsible for what. People are stepping on each other's toes. So I guess like tell me a little bit about you why you decided to jump into this side of the business. Like what was it that said, okay, people really F this up a lot, I could probably help them. Like tell me what triggered that.
Yeah, well,
You're the
so
outsourcing guy,
I'm the
Ryan.
outsourcing guy. I know. I know. It's a gift and a curse, I guess. So, so 13 years ago when I first started this, we were working with a single RPO provider,
Yeah.
and they were great. And then they had some great people who left, and so we woke up one day and we had 15 different people that we were working with from three different RPO companies.
Mm,
And so, and I realized, man, this is like core to what we're doing. And I don't have like visibility into kind of what's going on the day to day. And one company is a little bit different than the other company. And there's compensation issues and there's reward issues. And so I'm like, man, this is core to our business. This is what we're doing.
mm,
So,
Yeah.
and at the time we had like probably 5 internal recruiters, probably 3 or 4 salespeople.
Mhm.
And so I went to my partner at the time. I said, look, this is what we do. And if we're going to do it right, we've got to do it right. And we should go all in on this. And so that's when we went over to India and, interviewed a whole bunch of people. And it's funny, I've been talking to people about this for years. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
and people ask me, because I'm very open about it. And I'll just tell everybody, what I've done. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
tell everybody what you've done. And I'm like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah,
You know,
hearing it is one thing, doing it is another. Yes.
That's the
yeah,
other,
doing
yeah.
it is another thing. And it's funny. There's a good thing. I had a background in faking it till you make it, because when you're breaking ground on something that's completely new in a country that's completely
Mm,
foreign,
Yeah.
in languages you don't speak, and in
Yeah.
currencies you don't compute, and all kinds of different legislation and
Mm.
bureaucracy, and do I really have to bribe this government official to get
wow.
like, what I mean, like, he wants money, okay, so there, and then all the things like, monsoon season shuts down and
Yeah.
people can't get to work, and power outages in the early days were a
Mm,
commonplace, and
Yeah.
and then internet outages were almost the daily. So there was, the early days was a bit of the wild, wild west. Now it's
mm,
pretty, now it feels like, pretty commonplace, and pretty routine.
Yeah.
Just because how far we've come as a globe, as
Yeah.
a
right.
as a world, we can have conversations like this very freely, and
Yes.
Yeah,
rarely worry about the internet, although it does creep up and cause us
sure.
problems. Yeah, so,
Knock on wood. Yeah.
I mean, it is the internet, of course. Well, I love what
yeah.
you brought in because, like, I don't, you're actually flying into these countries, right? And you're kind of getting an understanding of like the culture. And obviously, the culture from the US to any other company is going to be slightly different. So I'm curious, like, how do you train these offshore teams to kind of work and be like your top recruiters? And what's that like secret sauce of
Mm.
scaling that like mindset for
Yeah.
those outsourcing
Yeah,
teams?
because I think to that point, and I add on to that, because to me, I've never worked with an outsourcing team, but it's like sometimes I feel as a company, it's like I don't have control over the people
Mm,
I get, right? So I'm out if I can't train them to be like my people. So it's a great question, Mirna.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a great question, and it's probably the thing that I struggle with the most in terms of our overall sales process, right?
Mm,
Because I get frequently, I want to meet these people, and I'm like,
mm,
Mm,
okay, so in this conversation that you're going to have with them, what are you going to ask them?
mhm,
Right. Tell me what you're evaluating on, because what I've learned is, it's funny. I've learned that even the people that I had my doubts in the beginning. I remember rewinding some 12 years ago, and I was meeting with everyone face to face, and I was kind
mhm,
of like doing my own kind of quarterly review, and looking at numbers, and kind of managing the team. And there was this one guy, Tony, who was not performing well. And when I spoke with him, he's from a region of India where his accent was thick, and he was really, really
mm,
difficult to understand. And I turned to my director at the time, and I'm like, you know what? I just don't think Tony's going to be right for this world. I think we need to, set him on his way. There's, better opportunities for him. And Jiffin's like, you know what? It's no. And he'll frequently do that. I respect his opinion. And sure enough, 6 months later, this guy was our top producer,
wow.
and he was amazing. So again, I get back to this, like, what are you evaluating, right?
yeah,
Because
Hmm.
what you can't evaluate in this world, at least not until you give them a chance, is how hard they're willing to work to be
mm,
successful.
sure.
Mm,
Yes.
And one of the things that I love about my team in India, and I've been working with them now for, gosh, 13, 14 years now, and so maybe even longer. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, their loyalty, their dedication, their curiosity, their desire to
mm,
learn, it's instilled in their values as a country. And don't get me wrong, there's also
Yeah.
amazing other
yeah.
countries, and I've worked with teams in the Philippines, and
Yes.
and certainly Central and South America. But there are definitely cultural differences and nuances in between
Sure.
all of them. And so
Hmm.
so they're dedicated. So what they don't know today, they will learn in 30
Hmm.
days, and
Mm,
they will
Yeah.
master in 60 days. So
wow.
and that's what I think is really important, is just when I tell people, like, you have to have a certain level of patience going into this.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to know this stuff right away, and
Hmm.
they're not going to be domain experts on this stuff right away. And it's funny, people underestimate the knowledge that they have in their industry, their candidate base,
Hmm.
their region, so traffic patterns and commuting, and their clients.
Yeah.
Like, there is domain expertise that you all have about your business and your clients and your candidates, your industry, that
Right.
even your competitors in the same industry may or may not know, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I always say, don't underestimate the value of what you have in terms of your own knowledge and things like that. And the key is to pass that on. And so whenever we structure teams, we've had, not only do we have a team lead, right? So we have your the people that are working on your account, but we always have a team lead, and that team lead always has 10 plus years of experience and
Yeah.
knows how to, search through and find his way around every single challenging search that they've come across.
And
That's
that
all
team
kinds of
lead,
industries.
that's with the staffing company or the outsource company.
That's with our company.
Oh, with their
Yeah.
company. Got it. Okay, perfect. Got it.
Yeah.
Yes, got it.
And again, I think that is somewhat unique to us, but
Yeah.
and all of those folks have had intimate knowledge of working with amazing recruiters directly over the years from all over the world. So
good.
I think that's a key component of it.
Yeah.
I think more than anything else, this is just like generically across any organization or any really outsourcing. You just have to be clear about what are we doing? What is your expectation? What is your expectation? What is the ramp up time? What is the knowledge base that we're transferring? And how long is it going to take to get up speed? It takes a minimum of 30 days to get up to speed. And we've closed deals in the first 30 days, but most of them come in the 60-day period of time.
Yeah.
And then it's just an accountability cycle, right? It's just every week, every day. Are we getting good jobs? Are we getting you good candidates? Our inputs is always good jobs, and our output are always good candidates. And that's the cycle of life, and so that's what we live on a regular basis.
So I'm thinking now of, like, I'm a business owner, small business owner, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm interested in leaning into this, right? What questions do I have to ask myself to say, am I ready for this? Is this right for me? Right. And when is it not right for a company? Like, what things would you say it's like, no, this is a death trap for you, run away now, right? The wrong disruption.
Yeah. I think if you find the right partner, there's always a good time. But I think some of the things that you really have to lean into is, do you have enough jobs? Okay. If you don't have enough jobs, your internal team will not view this as a benefit. They will, if you're a small organization, maybe you have 2 or 3 recruiters and you don't have enough jobs for those recruiters to work on, they're not going to see a benefit to this at all. In fact, this will probably be an annoyance or a threat, and it's not going to be helpful. So you have to have the jobs. And you also have to be, I always say, even if you don't have the jobs, you have to be honest with yourself about the team that you have, because I will say this: RPO will make your best recruiter amazing. Yeah. And it will make your worst recruiter even worse. Yeah. Because we're not going to make a bad recruiter better, right?
Yes.
A bad
that's
recruiter.
Not the reason you bring an RPO to, like,
you need to get rid of that person, find a good one. Yeah. You have some firing to do first. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know.
It is good to know. And, and I always say, the best time to bring on RPO is probably when you're starting to feel a little bit of pain and you're thinking about hiring your next recruiter. And I always say to my owners, are you better off helping your best recruiter or taking a flyer on some new recruiter that you're going to have to train and grow, and hopefully they pan out, and hopefully they have a good work ethic and enjoy the work and don't leave in 6 to 12 months, which we know the world is riddled with the past recruiters who have had 6 to 12 months of experience. So
absolutely.
Yes.
So that's the key. Those are two big things. There's also kinds of other opportunities. VMS is a perfect one. If you need dedicated speed, if you need a constant flow of candidates to stay on a VMS, if you know that if you don't get to the market with these candidates first, then that game we're very good at. And I find that the best recruiters in the world get frustrated by that game, right? The best
Yeah.
recruiters of the world who are doing amazing work for clients, as soon as those clients move over to a VMS or an MSP, they kind of look, I wouldn't say they lose interest, but they're not as happy as they once was when they had direct hiring manager access and
Right.
probably an early jump on the competition when they needed someone. There's always that natural hiring
Yeah.
manager who's going to call you up and say, "Hey, Paul, I've got this." Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't care what VMS you have. I don't care what MSP you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
There's always going to be the hiring manager that remembers Paul and says, "Paul,
Sure.
I got a job I need your help with." And you're going to
Yes.
get that call before.
Yeah.
And then he may type up the job description and put it in the VMS
Right.
and things
Of
like that.
course.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Got it. And on that note, like I guess so as a business owner, like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go with you guys. My concern is now I have people that I have not trained in my brand. They don't know my company, my brand. They don't live my culture every day, right? So how do I ensure that what parts of the business do I give them where I'm not concerned about sacrificing my brand when it comes to interacting with candidates?
Mm.
Yeah, this is a great, great question. And this is the number one question that we not only ask, but really dive deep into with our clients during what I call our implementation phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why that we do this is there's take a candidate profile, right? Everything that you ask about a candidate, everything from, what their desired job title is to their desired salary to whether or not they can work in the US or whether or not they're willing to work 3 days a week in the office or, whatever the case may be. There's a
Right.
base set of questions. And then there's questions that I think lead to a little bit of higher value conversations.
Yeah.
And that's always the biggest struggle because you want to provide enough information about the candidate to have it be a valuable interaction.
Yeah.
But really most of the candidates when they pick up the phone and they hear someone from India, they know that the person is not down the street from them.
Sure.
and
Right.
and has kids in the same school as them.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because what we want to do is we want to have what I call light screening. We want to have an interaction where we can get the basics. Like
Yeah.
if we found candidates that have these 5 things, right, which is authorized to work in the United States, interested in the commute, interested in the position, salaries and range, like the deal breakers. Like let's get through the deal breakers, folks. And then because they don't really want to have a conversation with our team most of the time, they want to have a conversation with one of you guys, which is why
Right.
I always say you have to support your best recruiters, because those best recruiters, they got on and they're selling their clients. They're prepping the candidate for their interview. They're debriefing with the candidates after the interview to gather like insight as to what, the clients asked this time around. Like we know what a good recruiter sounds like. And it's those kind of high value items. Yeah. And the best recruiters can, when they have more candidates in their pipeline and therefore more jobs to work on too, they can have more of that value added conversation around why they're such good recruiters.
Well, and I kind of have like a 2-part question. So how do you foster innovation and high performance among distributed or remote teams, right? Like we're in a kind of world of remote, but we're starting to see, at least in the US, I can only kind of speak about the US, wanting to kind of bring people back to hybrid. So that's kind of part one. And then what do you see as the biggest opportunity right now in the outsourcing world?
So, okay. So getting back to the teams and fostering teams and teams across borders and cultures and whatnot. To me, it's the accountability loop. When my team feels that they're getting really, really good jobs to work on and they're getting them first, and they're not getting jobs that have been worked for 2 days. They're not getting the C Rex only. They're probably, they're seeing the B's and the A's and the ATS, and they're like, "Oh, those look better. I want to work those."
Right.
If they if they feel appreciated and respected and they feel like they're getting good work, they will produce amazing results. And if they don't produce amazing results, we will make sure we manage those people into getting those results. So, we expect a certain amount of good jobs to work on, which is what every recruiter wants.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we are going to produce a certain amount of candidates to support those jobs. And there's an accountability. There's a trust thing, right?
Yeah.
Because when a new recruiter or a recruiter gets a new job, right? And they know probably some candidates around that job. They have like that inkling to like, maybe I'm going to work this for like a day and like see if I can find any candidates. When they ultimately have that trust in my team and they say, nope, this job goes to you, right? And then my team delivers those candidates, the same candidates that they would expect themselves to find. That's a really beautiful thing to see that trust and that accountability develop to the point where, I mean, I have teams of people who have closed so many deals together and worked together for so long that the thought of them moving on to another organization is crazy, right? So I've had clients come to me and say, hey, so-and-so said, they'd like a raise. And I know we can't really offer them that given the cost structure.
You should give them one for us. Yeah.
Give them one for us. And
Yeah.
we'll pay for an increase. And it's like that's the kind of like accountability, dedication to each other. And, and that team aspect that they're all in this together. One hand's feeding the other.
I love that. And I think, so I want to kind of go over to some like leadership advice, because obviously you've run teams in the United States, and now you're managing and building and training and coaching teams that are, outsourced. What would you say is the best piece of leadership advice you ever received that you kind of practice today when it comes to managing teams, and maybe the worst leadership advice?
Yeah. Best leadership advice.
You don't have to give the worst. Names, it's fine.
No. I could give you some worst leadership examples, but I'd say that there's a certain natural way that people are, right? Take the recruiters that I mentioned early on in the conversation. One of them was just a naturally friendly person, just, always wanting to have the next conversation and get to know somebody, and was kind of a naturally friendly soul, The other one was, very much an expert of her craft, right? And kind of had a desire to grow and build her skills. Neither one of them was, say, right or wrong. It was just who they were. Right. So I think the best leadership advice that I've had is, it's the whole like good to great, like fill the bus. Right.
Yeah.
Who are you putting on the bus? What do they represent? What are their values? What are their skills? What do they add to the team? You kind of have to have that like real emotional, intelligence, that EQ. If you don't know what makes somebody great, if you don't make somebody, if you don't see their like inherent values and like their pure essence, like who they are as a person, and you're trying to have them be something different than who they are, it's never going to work.
Right.
So that's that. And it's funny too, because I don't have the same cultural context in India. Our first like office was in a city called Bangalore, and there were 15 people when we first started. And when I got there, I'm like meeting all of them, and 4 of them I had worked with in years past. And so they were all from Hyderabad, but then they were from Kerala, Bengal, guys coming in from Delhi. And I realized there were like 15 people, and they spoke 9 different languages.
Yeah.
And so, but they were all speaking English and whatnot. So I've also learned that like, I am not going to be as emotionally intelligent as my director in India, who can pick up on the little nuances that they're saying to
Right.
themselves. Maybe not even Hindi, which is kind of the common language of India that was kind of like created, but it's in there like when they're speaking Telugu to each other, you know, and then when they're, you know, when they're kind of in their own comfort, like how they're speaking to each other.
Yeah.
Those little nuances I think are important. And I've learned to just defer to others. I think that's another leadership advice.
Trusting.
Is like,
Yeah.
trust your instinct, trust the person first,
Yes.
and then trust their instincts if they're closer to it.
That's a good point, because so many times, like we're in a bullpen or we're hearing here and somebody, I'm like, how you doing? You're like, I'm fine. You know, and you can hear an inflection and you're like, you're not fine, right? Like, I know you're not fine. I would not know, like, if I was talking to somebody, and it's just because I don't know inflections and what they sarcastically say something like, right? And so there's that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and something too, so I'm bilingual in Spanish, and I've looked into like how the brain, and look, I only know 2 languages, so to know 9, I can't even imagine the processing that's happening in their brains. But, you know, I've read into how even like, let's just use me, for example, my personality in English can differ from Spanish based off of like the level of comfort of like what I'm doing in that language. And so you're talking about this in like, you know, multi-language workforce. Like, you're right. How could somebody from over here really dive into that and really pick up on those nuances and really understand that, you know, those culture, you know, nuances. I mean, I know I get stuck in 2 languages. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, what's the word? And I play charades. I cannot imagine knowing 9 languages. That is like a powerhouse of a human being, right? And then to be able to like layer in recruit, it's just a, you know, wonderful in that sense. But going back to that point, it's like, you're just leaving that to the people that can do that aspect of you know, that job. So that's awesome. Well, given your background, Brian, in tech and IT consulting, and this is something that Paul and I are very passionate about. We'd love to hear your feedback. We're excited about something coming soon with AI and what that can look like for companies. But how do you like merge what you know with everything that's coming out with AI, you know, automation, transformation, and kind of complementing those 2 processes?
Yeah, you know what I would say, and I actually love this question because it's funny. I had a conversation with somebody a year ago, and they said something to the effect of AI is going to make RPO obsolete. And
I was actually thinking that a little, because I'm thinking about pre-screening, and some of the tech I've worked with does a lot of that pre-screening. So is there a marriage between the 2?
Absolutely. And here's what I believe. I believe that there will be recruiters, and the recruiters will be folks like yourselves, the people who have a depth of understanding, a depth of expertise. You know, I think that the days of hiring the 22-year-old who is going to be able to compete with the recruiting, you know, experts and veterans. And I think the recruiting veterans that really embrace AI. There's actually a book that I read years ago called Why the Right Brain People Will Rule the World, and it talked about how, you know, automation and the abundance of folks in Asia and the abundance of resources in the world has created an environment where your creativity and your ability to synthesize all that is really what's going to set you apart. I think, you know, and if you listen to the pundits in our industry, you know, consultants in the staffing and recruiting industry, and I know many of them, and I've listened to and hired a lot of them. And, you know, they talk about the $500,000 desk. I'm sure you guys have heard about, you know, that the average recruiter should, you know, top recruiters should be in the $500,000 desk range. I just think that's all going to increase.
Sure.
I think that the best recruiters of the world, they're just going to increase their throughput. They're going to increase their efficiency. They're going to increase the number of candidates that they speak with. But the same thing holds true. AI is never going to have a quality conversation.
Hmm.
AI is never going to have a meaningful conversation with a candidate about what their true intentions are.
Yeah.
There is something there, the human aspect of what we do, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
And I think that AI and really RPO, when done right, can only support those people even more than they have been supported before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the ones that will embrace it and change what they do are going to be the ones that are really, really successful.
Yeah. And I think, to that point, I've in my past few years working in more of the tech side of things when it comes to staff, tech stacks and working with some different softwares. I've worked with a number of folks in India who were my counterpartners, right, helping with my dev teams. And I remember back in the day when I was with a company and we had outsourced our IT to India. We're like, I couldn't understand. I'm like, I can't understand this person. And that was the stigma that came with outsourcing, is they're never going to be able to understand it. But I have to say that we need to be a little bit more aware. And I think we just need to say it. India's folks are becoming more and more, they've become very sophisticated in their ability to speak English and the ability to interact in seamlessly and have emotional conversations, to your point, right? Like, where I actually am so connected with a gentleman now, and he moved on, but we'd have conversation about family and this. So I think it's not so transactional anymore with the conversation. So I think it's important for people to remember that that's where I don't think AI can replace the RPO process. I think again, to your point, it can just add some value to where does it need to streamline your applicant process to where now your outsourcing folks are actually talking to people that have maybe been pre-vetted a little bit, and now they're having more meaningful conversations that allow your people to just increase their meaningful conversations, and it all flows downhill, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I think I still think we're ripe for even more innovation in this space. I know a lot of the software companies that are in this world, and they're approaching. There's so many different problems that they're trying to solve, and they're approaching them from really different angles. It's a unique environment, and I'm excited to see how it all kind of shakes out and stay close to all of it. But it's an exciting time. I love this. I mean, our industry, it changes all the time.
Yes.
I mean, just think about in the last 20 years how many job boards have changed. The title of being the best job board to go to. You know what I mean?
So what is on that note, what's the next big evolution for your company? Like what's your big what are you guys leaning into right now without spilling too many beans, right?
It's funny because my team has always been amazing recruiters. At their core, they've always been excellent at finding candidates all over the world. And it's funny. I've always thrown new things at them, and I'm very, very grateful for my director and some of my team leads over there, because they always embrace the new, and they're like, yes, Brian. They do their lovely head nod. Yes, Brian. Sure, Brian. That's we can do it.
Yes, we can do it. They embrace. For sure. Absolutely.
I love that.
And they're always up for it. I mean, so we can find oil and gas engineers in Canada. Yes, Brian. We can find, life sciences, life sciences engineers in the Netherlands. Yes, Brian. We can find financial services people in the UK, and sure enough, they can do it. So, so what's funny is, what I've also realized is they're really good recruiters. They're really good at just finding people in general. So, what we've found is, hey, do you need XYZ? And the person can, live in India but work for you, or we're finding professionals all over the world now. So I think the next big thing for my company in particular is we've actually hired close to 15 marketing professionals over the last year. As you know, the recruiting industry has been pretty tough in the last really 2 years, I would say. I can tell you when it was June of 2022 when interest rates went through the roof. And really corporations around the world tighten the belt on their capital budgets, and and it hasn't changed. So it's funny. I think the CFOs of the world, as of June of 2022, have just decided to not be investing until they have a really clear picture on where things are going. And the
Which
first,
is not going to happen anytime
no.
soon.
So yeah,
There's just more questions in the air now.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's been a frustrating couple of years for us, but in the recruiting world, everybody was waiting for the election, and then the election happened.
Same.
Then Trump got a little crazy with these unpredictability of the tariffs. So that's kind of kept the belt pretty tight for these these executives. But what we've done is since recruiting has been a little bit lighter, we've been getting into marketing and providing marketing professionals both for interim CMOs and fractional CMOs, and
I love that.
and kind of helping people craft their teams, because really anything you do in business is a series of activities. And there's always a need for more of one activity and less of another activity. For example, you need to talk to 100 candidates to have like 10 meaningful conversations.
Right.
Yes.
So
yeah.
you know what I mean? So let's tackle, how are we going to do these 90 to get you to the 10?
Right.
Yeah. So that's it. It's really true of everything in business. Like, for example, we have another client who, they had a really, really good closer, selling this kind of financial services type of service offering. And the closer was great. And they had, they hired a couple of other salespeople, and he was doing all the opening and the closing. And so they realized these other salespeople aren't as good. So we kind of came up with the idea of like, how about we get a team of like 4 setters? And we're just going to fill up Ryan's calendar all day, every day, to have conversations with these types of people. And so that's kind of what it's become. And that's true of really any kind of business service offering. We've got clients that are doing cleaning services. We've got other clients that are just doing professional services. So just getting them more conversations.
So it sounds like there's an opportunity, depending on the company. There's definitely opportunity out there for these companies, it sounds like, within different niches even. So, you kind of think of, at least in your scenario, and you kind of think maybe it's just technology, but it can span, like you said, we'll find it. Whatever you need, Brian, we'll find it. Well, I feel like we could really talk.
Oh my God, all day. I love it, because it's something that I think there is a stigma around outsourcing still with some firms, where it's almost like when you, and I'll say this, and I think that I don't believe this anymore after really chatting with you, is if I outsource, it's like I'm not good enough as a company, or I'm not able to do it myself. There's a pride issue, I think, in some organizations for outsourcing. And I think if anything, you've helped us understand that, no, this is like, leave your pride, what did Nabel used to say, leave your ego at the door.
Leave your ego at the door.
So I'm really, I do love that.
Yeah. And it's
look,
funny
go ahead. Sorry, Ryan.
No, it's funny. I think people underestimate global demographics.
Yes.
And for example, do you know there are 9 million vacant homes in the country of Japan? Just 9 million homes that are just not filled because their population is in decline, and it's been in decline for a number of years. But they have some of the largest cities in the world, 20 million, 25 million people. But once a country starts declining, right, that the declining population, it really kind of can cause some real issues as a country. Whereas India has 1 million people coming into the workforce every month.
Wow.
So I cannot, and this is the part that like I don't think people truly understand. I can't hire enough people, right? Like there are so many people that are hardworking, intelligent, have gone to school, great family values, great loyalty, great dedication. I cannot hire enough people in India because the population is growing so fast. And so it becomes, okay, then what are we going to do about this? Let's take good people and couple them with a growing population and, service clients and, all over the world. Right. So there's just a lot of ways to do things. And that's the exciting part for me.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like you really did kind of open the door, because I'm with Paul. Like there is like a stigma behind RPO. There is a stigma potentially about, other countries and how they operate, how they work, and, like you mentioned, even just like the cultural differences. So, we might have you back, Brian. Like, we'll have to like have you back and share more, and hopefully you'll have some awesome updates there. But I want to just jump into kind of getting to know Brian, the outsourcing guy.
When he's not the outside of the
outsourcing.
outsourcing.
Yeah. When he's not the outsourcing guy.
Yeah.
So like, what's your go-to productivity tool or app that you just like cannot live without?
Yeah, you know what? There's a in the newest version of ChatGPT, I think it's 4.0, and I haven't had direct use of it just yet, but I have a virtual assistant that helps me in India, and just through our own interactions, he's become pretty good at understanding me. Right?
Yes.
He's there's the domain knowledge of I know Brian, so what would Brian say? But
Sure.
ChatGPT actually allows you to kind of create an instance of what would Brian say, right?
Yes.
And so that's been a really fun thing for us to play with, because
Yes.
I've got other people on my team like Jonathan's, and what would Jonathan say? What would Jippy say? And so you start to create a chat GPT that's around your tone, your message,
correct.
So that's been kind of fun.
I love that you're like mixing the human element with like the AI, and not really like, I love that.
So I guess
we've all heard those AI conversations that just don't. It's like, please,
correct.
Let's edit this, folks.
Yeah,
before we send it out.
All right. So if you were doing staffing or outsourcing, what would you think you would be doing today? Like, what was your school dream that you never did, or what do you want to do when you grow up?
You know what's funny? I really enjoyed my time in consulting, and I think the only thing that I didn't really enjoy about consulting was the hard, long hours of working, almost feeling like a slave. If you guys know anything about the Deloittes and the Accentures of the world, it's just it's a bunch of smart people who work too hard, and it's a badge of honor to work harder than the next person. And so
I see.
So just having kind of graduated to this life of being an entrepreneur, I don't know that I would do anything different. I really enjoy being an entrepreneur. I think I enjoy the consulting aspect of things, though. So more than anything, I think one of the reasons why I'm enjoying kind of your podcast and doing more of these podcasts is I enjoy helping businesses. Like I really geek out about just getting into any business, and I've helped a lot of different ones in different ways, and so for me that's really, really fun. I don't know that I'll ever retire, so to speak.
Right. The thought of that makes me crazy. I'm like, what would I do with my day? Like,
what would I do?
I see my neighbor playing with his flowers all day, and I'm like, that's not me. I can't.
That's not me.
That's not me.
They'd be dead.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be long gone.
So I think any kind of business, I've got three daughters that are in combination of high school and heading off to college, and
wow, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. They're the best.
No easy feat.
And I envision a time when they're working and kind of engaging in this new world. And I think all of our children are in for a really, really different world than we've experienced, and it's one part terrifying and one part exciting.
Do not even get me started on that. Absolutely. Last one to wrap things up. And I feel like you mentioned a couple books, but if you weren't doing, what's a book, quote, or philosophy that's changed how you lead today, Brian?
Book, quote, or philosophy that has, it's funny. I went to college with the current CEO of Starbucks. He's a buddy of mine, Brian Nickel, and
the coffee guy.
He's the coffee guy. Yeah, he's and it's funny. It wasn't one of his quotes, but it's funny because Brian, he was the president of my fraternity. there wasn't a moment in my life and interactions where that guy wasn't the alpha or the leader in the room, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you
Yeah.
just,
Right.
if you've been around people who are leaders, you feel it around
Yes.
them. No matter what they do, they're not trying, they're not, this is nothing. So there's a genuine nature to it. And one of Brian's predecessors at Starbucks was a big fan of servant leadership. And so that's been an interesting kind of, I guess, thought-provoking concept for me is, you have these people that are natural born leaders, right? They're the alphas in the room. They hear something that they know is not a great idea, and they're, quick to tactfully and politely. And I've got stories from him about different decisions that he's made over the years where, where someone thought it was a good idea to do X, Y, Z. And you have to, in the political world of corporate America,
Sure.
you have to, kind of be as tactful as possible. But, just the idea of that like natural leader alpha coupled with the idea of servant leadership. So like, for example, you won't always agree with something, and you kind of the alpha, and you may know, and the intelligent, experience knows, but how do you then turn that into, I'm serving you as a leader and helping you? That's without
sounding like you're just pooping on their idea. How do you make that? How do you make And that's interesting, because I think we've all had leaders that have been able to tell us that's a really shitty idea, Paul, and make me feel good about it. And like that's the natural, like, I think. But again,
and you're excited to come back with more ideas.
I want to know what next shitty idea is.
They didn't like this one, but I feel good about it.
I love that. Well, Brian, as we said, you are just a wealth of information, and I can't believe we've gone this long, but I definitely appreciate you spending time with us today. And
appreciate you having me.
If you guys liked it out there, like, remember to share this, tag it, reach out to Brian if you want to just shoot the shit, talk about RPO and be, so Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Brian.
Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Okay.